pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another page 112 tag. This is the Man International Booker Prize version. Peg the Book Prize Addict has sent me 3 page 112s from among the long list for the Man Booker International Prize. I don't know which books these are from, and at the end of the video I'm going to check her second email to find out which books these are from. In the meantime, I'm going to read them to you, give you my thoughts on page 112 only, and rank them in the order in which I would be most interested to read them, if at all. If this is an interesting exercise for you, you will be doing the same, and you will probably, quite likely, many of you will not agree with my ranking and have your own thoughts, and I would be very interested to hear those thoughts in the comment section below. The page 112 tag is something that I adapted from an actual literary prize in France called, in English, the page 112 prize, where the adjudicators of the prize create a short list based on page 112 only, done totally blind without any title or author information from the long list. And it's been a really fun tag to use on BookTube. So this one is specifically focused on 3 books that are on the current long list for the Man Booker International Prize. So I need some coffee to get me through this. As I've said before, Japanese vending machines sell hot coffee in cans for about $1. Now, but I don't think I've explained that the hot beverages are only available in the winter months, and they're starting to disappear, and in the spring and summer it's only cold beverages, so these coffees would be not heated anymore starting right about now. I had to really hunt to find a vending machine that still had some hot coffees left. But I'll tell you, when it gets hot in Tokyo, cold coffee tastes pretty good. Iced coffee, as they say. Here's book number 1. Life does not flow, I thought, as they were sentencing me to a series of consultations with various professionals as a result of that ill-fated trip to the sea. One of the exercises I had to do involved shutting myself in a room with a mirror and looking at my reflection for hours. The idea was that when it was over, I'd be able to tell them what I'd seen. But you're all wasting your energy. I don't need to look at my reflection to know I'm a piece of shit. What's the point? Why didn't I keep my mouth shut? Forget I said anything. Why do you say you're a piece of shit? Is this what you think of yourself, or what you think other people think of you? I almost don't bother answering at this point. I already know I'm a piece of shit. There was a strong smell of roast chicken coming from outside. Later, they'd watch a movie on human relations and follow it with a discussion. They asked, "Do you miss your loved ones?" And my head was in a tank of water, and I saw my son with the face of a little child, dirty cheeks, red bottom, blonde hair. "Do you miss your country?" they went on. "A Polish country bumpkin, a strawberry blonde, an exile just like me." And they continued making noise with their desiccated words. They were practically talking over one another, and in my mind, Glenn Gould playing English Suite No. 1. "Why didn't you make it into the sea?" they kept asking. "It's symbolic, wouldn't you say? Why couldn't you bring yourselves to take the final step?" And I saw myself in my little swimsuit, my 2 pink dots in the wind, my sandy vagina, my haggard 3-year-old eyes. Okay, so the first thing to say is I know many readers don't like reading fiction that doesn't have quotation marks. And I'm not that kind of reader. I actually, and this is just for me, I'm not judging anybody else, but I rather enjoy it without the quotation marks. And I'm kind of radical to the point where, and this is just for me, not judging anyone, but I think quotation marks are a little childish. But I think I have a minority opinion. So I quite like the fact that this is a quotation mark free dialogue. for me, it's just really easy to see who's talking. There's no confusion. And when there is confusion, that just adds to that just makes me concentrate more. But for me, there's no question about where one character is stopped talking and the other has. And I think my intonation as I was reading it reflects the choices, my interpretation, and you may disagree. So that's just interesting. So I had no problem with that. I don't like long paragraphs. That's one thing. I'm not so interested when I see this is all one full paragraph that's continuing on to the next page. So what do I think of this? I think it's interesting. I like the writing. So basically, in one sentence, I like the writing. I don't think I'm interested in the story. This is a woman that's undergoing some kind of psychological or psychiatric evaluation or counseling. And that is a narrative that has been overdone in my reading life. And I just don't want to read about people in that context. It's just boring for me. But I do like the writing. I'm curious about, where is this? Because you don't typically notice the strong smell of roast chicken in your psychiatrist's office. And who are they? They'd watch a movie on human relations. Team of psychiatrists? Maybe it's a psychiatric group home? And interesting, my head was in a tank of water. I saw my son with the face of a little child. But especially at the very end, I saw myself in my little swimsuit. My 2 pink dots in the wind, my sandy vagina. That is such a crisp, sharp image. I really like that. But, again, it could just be the luck of the draw that this isn't primarily a story about somebody undergoing mental health treatment of some kind. I guess I want to clarify, because I'm interested in fiction about mental illness. I just don't like reading about therapy. I'm done with therapy. So, one of my favorite novels. My favorite novel this year so far is Kweke Emezi's Freshwater, which is very much about mental illness. I'm finding the therapy stuff here a bit of a turnoff, but I do like the writing quite a lot. Book number 2. Book number 2 has 2 sentences at the top of page 112, and then a maybe chapter heading or a section heading. So here we go. And yet I find the idea unsettling to this very day. Meridians don't exist after all. Not really. Unus mundus. I have a poet friend who, unfortunately, was never able to live off her poetry. Is there anyone who lives off poetry? So she started working at this travel agency, and since she spoke excellent English, she ended up becoming a tour guide for American groups. She was great at it, and she kept getting recommended for even the most exacting guests. She would pick them up in Madrid, fly with them to Malaga, and then they'd sail to Tunis. Normally it was a small group, around 10 people. She enjoyed these assignments, and she had on average 2 per month. She liked to relax then in the finest hotels, which she would take opportunity to sleep in. She had to take them around the various landmarks, and so she read a lot in those days in preparation. On the sly, she also wrote. When some especially interesting idea came to mind, a phrase, an association, she knew she had to write it down right away, because if not, it would be gone forever. Memory falters with age, gets spottier. So she'd get up and go to the bathroom and write it down, sitting in the toilet. Sometimes she would write on her hands, just letters, mnemotechnics. She was not a specialist in Arab countries and their cultures. She had studied literature and linguistics, but she consoled herself with the fact that her tourists weren't either. Let's not kid ourselves, she'd say. It's just one world. Well, I don't like this at all. This is awful. It is really dull prose. It's an expository passage. There's no scene, there's no dialogue except what she says to herself. Let's not kid ourselves. It's just one world. Really? What an original thought. Banal. And what prescient insight into the writing process. When some especially interesting idea came to mind, a phrase, an association, she knew she had to write it down, because if not, it would be gone. Memory gets spottier. Oh my God, I never would have thought of that on my own. I didn't Google what unus mundus is, but I don't care. Now, actually, the only interesting lines are at the top of the page, and yet I find the idea unsettling to this very day. Meridians don't exist after all. Not really. That's kind of interesting. I don't know what it means, but it's the only interesting sentences on the page. Okay, I meant to start with this at the beginning of the video, so I'll say this now. I find most translated fiction unsatisfying, and so I know that I differ sharply with many booktubers who read a lot of international fiction. I am really interested in international fact fiction, but I find most translations are crap. I'm sorry. Unless it's a well-known novelist where the publishing company will invest in a decent translator, like this is probably the fault of a really weak translation. Or maybe it's shitty prose. It's which came first, the chicken or the egg argument, but this is uninspired, lackluster prose, and it's translated, so it's probably the translator. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to read this book. Ugh. Let's see if book number 3 is any better. It's all right to have bad times, but if you never know where you'll sleep and what you'll eat, was there really no place in the entire world where I could lie down to sleep? I looked in front of me and behind me, and I saw nothing. But I told my mother things were good with me. And my mother said to me that things were good with her. But I knew she didn't own any land. If I didn't give her money, and if no one else ever gave her anything, she couldn't cook anything for herself and my siblings. My silence and her silence met when we looked at each other. Then I worked helping with the harvest on a plantation. The first week, the second week, the third week. He turns the broom around again, but remained standing there. I thought, if I wasn't there anymore, no one could ask me for anything else. And then I sat down at the edge of the field and cried. It's like that. Many people in Ghana are very desperate. Some of them hang themselves. Others take DDT. They drink water afterward, then they go into the house, close the door behind them, and die. I sent a kid to the store where they have DDT, but the seller asked the kid who sent him. He looked for me, and then he talked to me for a long time and said I should think about it carefully. For 3 days after this conversation, I sat in the mosque and thought about it. Then I didn't have the strength to do it anymore. And after that, I got sick. Richard gets up and walks across the hall to the library. He sometimes sits in the armchair there to talk on the phone. Maybe he needs a book to clear his head before he goes to sleep. If the DDT seller hadn't talked to me then, I'd have died a long time ago. Okay, well, there is gestures towards some kind of a theme or story here that might be interesting. This novel is set in Ghana, or some part of it is set in Ghana. I am vaguely familiar with the long list, and I don't remember any African writers being on the list, but so there's a impoverished, sad, there's a leaf. There are birds above me, and I've been pooped on in this location before, so I'm a little paranoid. There's some kind of impoverished country, impoverished people. People are turning suicidal. That's all very sad and potentially interesting. But this is one of the worst page 112s I have ever seen. This is garbage writing. Come on. Oh, look at the paragraph breaks. Almost every sentence is its own paragraph, and that just drives me crazy. That's worse than a 2-page long paragraph. It's just lame. This writing is just shitty. Anything. That is high school writing. My silence and her silence met when we looked at each other. But I knew, colon, she didn't own any land. What is it with the... It's the most inane use of colons I've ever seen in my life. But that sentence, but I knew she didn't own any land. She's your mother. I would hope you knew that. Like, this is just stupid. So, no, you couldn't pay me to read that book. Okay, so, this is where I rank. What do you think my ranking will be? The writing of book number 1 interests me, but I still don't want to read it, I don't think. It'll be interesting to find out more about the book, and if the book is not so psychiatrically preoccupied, then I may change my mind and wish to read it. But on the basis of page 112, and this is actually page 113 Peg has sent me, because presumably page 112 was blank or didn't have very much text on it, and that's totally fine, right? It's just such a random page number to choose. I might be more interested in it. You couldn't pay me to read books number 2 or books number 3. Just horrifically bad writing, oh my god, or translation. Okay, so I'm going to take you home now, and I'm going to log onto the computer, check Peg's email to find out what these books are, and let's see if that adds any nuance to my condemnatory judgment of the last 2. But just before I turn the recording off here, I will say that right now I'm reading a novel from the Man Booker International Prize long list, the Taiwanese novel, The Stolen Bicycle by Wu Mingyi. And I'm finding the prose there is less than stellar, but the story is very engaging, and very rarely does that work for me, and that may not end up working for me with the Stolen Bicycle novel, but occasionally I can kind of hold my nose about the prose and just enjoy the story. It's a very rare phenomenon, but it has happened, and I'm kind of hoping it happens with this Taiwanese novel. But not that bad of writing. No. Okay, I'm gonna take you home and let's find out what the books are. Okay, I'm back home, and just before I check Peg's email, I want to say that I had some very strong reactions to a couple of these pages, and don't be shy. At the end, I'm going to ask you to give me your own ranking and your own opinion. Don't be shy to disagree with me. You're not usually shy to disagree with me, but I did come down pretty hard on those 2, and I don't regret it, because they just made me want to puke. But it's okay if you like them. We can still be friends. All right? Now let's let's check the find out what these books are. Well, I'm shocked. I am so shocked. Holy smokes! I'm not shocked by number 1. Actually, I'm only shocked by number 3, because I just can't believe number 3. But number 1 is Die My Love by Ariana Harwich. I'm going to do a check on the pronunciation while I'm filming. I'd heard about that when I heard it was about mental illness. I was pretty sure that was the one. I kind of recognized enough from page 112 to think that that was what it was. Number 2, I was not surprised that this is Flights by Olga Tokarczuk, and I'm going to double check the pronunciation of that while I'm filming. But I'm shocked by number 3, although now that I remember what that novel is about, it is about African refugees. So fine. But I'm just shocked about how bad the writing was. Go Went Gone by Jenny Erpenbeck. I've heard such good things about her. I've got one of her books on my pile, the first one, or an earlier one, The End of Days, and I've heard nothing but good about her, but I just thought that writing was awful! Okay, so let's check pronunciation. I've done this little tutorial before, but when you're talking about Man Booker International writers, the pronunciation can be a challenge. So, first one is Ariana Harwich. So I'm going to go to Google and type Harwich pronunciation, and 99% of the time it will point me to Okay, this is one of the 1% of the times where it doesn't actually point me to a pronunciation video on YouTube that will teach me how to pronounce it, but Harwich, I think. The next one, Tokarczyk. Okay, so here is, I'll open the video and you can hear along with me how to correctly pronounce Tokarczyk. My guess is Tokarczyk.
Pronouncenames.com.
Tokarczuk. Tokarczuk.
So it says Ukrainian and Polish, Tokarczuk. But there was about 3 or 4 other videos I could have checked to compare. From now on, I will pronounce it Tokarczuk. No, I didn't think I was going to like Olga Tokarczuk's book from what I'd heard about it, but it seems like it's a really awful translation. And I guess I'm curious if Mel's watching this. Do you think that's a good translation of her writing? I thought her writing was supposed to be amazing. I'm talking about Jenny Erpenbeck now, from Germany. But I thought that writing, and like one-sentence paragraphs, a page full of one-sentence paragraphs, and anything, any piece of writing that uses anything 1,700 times in one page deserves to go in the trash can. Ugh. What I've heard of Die My Love, which is about kind of a woman that's having a psychological breakdown, disintegration of her psyche, and it's not a linear narrative from what I remember hearing, I don't want to read it. So I don't want to read any of these. Although I thought I would have wanted to read the Erpenbeck, so that's the biggest shocker. I don't want to read Flight. I don't like the writing at all. Shockingly, you couldn't pay me to read Go, Went, Gone. That book has Go, Went, Gone off my TBR completely, based on page 112. How about you?